As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping on to the NBA Finals court, Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
You're just in time to talk about some more great football history as Jeff Payne, vintage football collector, joins us again to talk about some more items from his Pottsville Maroons collection. Jeff has got some really exciting things to share with us and some great stories of how he got them. Jeff joins us in just a moment to tell us all about the pieces in his collection.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And welcome to another edition where we get to talk about some great football history. We're going to go back some 100 years ago and talk about some memorabilia from the NFL and maybe a little bit before the NFL. Our friend Jeff Payne is back on again. Jeff, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Great to be here, Darren. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, Jeff, you sent me an email a couple weeks ago telling me about a couple pieces of your collection that I was not aware of. And I was pretty stoked when you told me you had them because these are really some cool items. And I know you always have some great backstories on how you get them too. So we're looking forward to both the story of the piece, its history to football, and how you got it. So I will put the floor over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of Pottsville Maroons items. Last time we talked about the Maroons, we were focused on the 1925 team. Of course, that was the team that, many of us believe got their championship stolen. But these are a couple of items from some years past that in the 20s, but equally rare and equally hard. And I think some pretty good stories how I went about getting some of these things. I'll start with the first thing is in 1926, the Pottsville Maroons produced a set of postcards, real photo postcards of the players on the 1926 team. And one interesting thing about the 26 team that most people don't really focus on because of the whole controversy with 1925 is they might have had a better team in 1926 than they had in 25. With 2 games left in the season, they were 10-1-1, and we're going to play the the other two teams who had one loss, the Chicago Bears and the Yellow Jackets from Frankfurt. And if they win those two games, they're the NFL champs in 26. They also set a record that year, a record that obviously will never be broken now. Changes in the game. They had 11 NFL shutouts in their games.
Wow.
Yeah, both of their ties were shutouts, and 9 of their 10 wins were shutouts. They only gave up 29 points all season, and they played, including exhibition games, they played 20 games, and they gave up 29 points. But you have to realize they had their whole team pretty much back from 26. Other than a few small changes, they were a great team and probably were better than the 25 team. And ironically, they lost to the Bears 9-7 in Chicago. Heartbreaking loss. It was apparently really cold, really windy, really rainy. It was muddy. It was just sounds like horrible conditions. And the Maroons missed 3 field goals, which was their undoing. They lost 9-7. And they gave up some points when they muffed a punt that cost them dearly. They gave up the go-ahead score. So, they could have won that game. And then Frankfurt, going into the last game, Frankfurt knew they only needed a tie. They didn't need to win that game. They only needed a tie because they were ahead of the Bears in the standings at that point. And they played for a tie. It was a 0-0, apparently really cold. Wasn't rainy, but just really frozen ground, hard to get traction, a lot of punts. Both teams missed a couple field goals, so they both had a chance to win, but it ended in a 0-0 tie, and the Yellow Jackets clinched the NFL championship 26. So
wow,
little history there. Yeah. But back to
the most surprising thing is, it was cold in Pennsylvania in
can you believe that?
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
You and I we never saw a winter like that in Erie, right?
Right.
Never. Yeah. So back to the postcards. Sometime during the season, and I actually think it was probably mid-year, when these postcards were produced, and I can give you my reasoning for that. The Maroons created a set of postcards of all their players. And so there's 18 players in the set. They're individual portraits of the players in their uniforms, kind of waist high, waist up. Beautiful, beautiful postcards. Generally considered, or many consider it, the first football card set of all NFL players. Around that era, there were other cards, the star player candies, the Spaldings, or other sets, but most of them were either all college or they were a combo of college and pros. This set was the first set of all NFL players. And it wasn't really until 9 years later when the National Chickle set came out, which of course is kind of the iconic pre-war NFL set. So it predates, the Chickle set by 9 years. And of course, the Chickle set wasn't all NFL players too, because they had a Newt Rockne tribute card in it. But other than that, it was all NFL players. So the Maroons set is, pretty unique. They appear to have been given out to the players. And I'll give you some thoughts on why. Well, one is these things are very hard to find. I've only been able to locate, and I mean just know of the existence of 59 cards, so a little bit over 3 sets total, if there's 18 players in a set, that are out there that I know of that collectors have. And I've been tracking these things for like a decade.
Now were these just of the Pottsville Maroons, or when you're saying NFL players, or were there other players from other teams?
Just the Maroons.
Just the Maroons, okay.
Yeah, I believe they were created probably by the team itself. Joe Zacco, who was the longtime, big advocate of the Maroons and fought for them to get their championship back, and he owned the sports store. I think he was probably involved in that. He was involved in a lot of the, team types of things in town there. But yeah, it's only Maroons.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, of those 59 cards that I've been able to locate and figure out who has them or where they live right now, 57 of them I've been able to kind of zero in and put into 4 different sets. So I know there's enough differences with them. Either, some of the cards, like Joe Zacco for his set, he stamped the back of them with his kind of sports store emblem and his stamp, right? So when you see those, you know they came from Joe Zacco, right? There's an autograph set out there I'll talk about that was complete. It's the only complete set I've ever seen, that, came obviously all together. So you can actually associate most of these cards with a particular set, which really means there's only, right, at least as far as I know, 3 or 4 sets that have been floating around and changing hands out there in all this time, 100 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what kind of size are these? Like a
postcard size?
Postcard size that we would consider a postcard today?
Yes.
That size? Okay.
Yeah, they have postcard backs on them, so they were, they have a stamp, frame on them and place to write on the back. I mean, you could have used them as postcards. And maybe some of them were used as postcards. I've never seen any of them used. One thing that I think that probably is one of the reasons why there's not more of them floating around. I mean, even if they gave them out to all the players and Zacco got a set and the coaches all got a set, gosh, you'd be kind of surprised there's so few out there. But there's no information on these postcards. There's no player name. There's no team name. There's no information on the front. It's just a player in a football uniform from the waist up, and on the back it's just a standard postcard format. So I can see these things, and that's my dream. My dream is to go to a card show in Pennsylvania and just be flipping through some postcards, and oh my gosh, here's a whole stack of these babies, because you wouldn't know what they were if you didn't know what to look for. Right. So I started collecting them. The first lot of these I saw came up actually in the 2012 Leland's auction, where a lot of the Joe Zacco stuff came up. I think I mentioned last time that was an auction. I was able to pick up a few things. I picked up those big tubs of paper that we talked about last time that had some stuff in it. That same auction had a near complete set of these postcards. I think there was probably 12 or 13 of them. They were all, in there as one lot. I didn't really know anything about them at the time. Like I said, I was just getting into the Maroons at that point, and I was like, oh, these are kind of cool, but I had no idea how rare they were, how difficult they were to find. And so I think I threw a bid in, but I didn't really, go after them. It wasn't until after that when I ran into a longtime collector who was actually one of the 2 people that bought that lot. He and a buddy who knew what they were bought it and split it. So he got half and this other buddy got half. He started educating me about them, and he was interested in starting to sell some of them off, as he was kind of thinning his collection and, looking at getting some other things. And so I ended up buying from him over a couple year period, 6 of them. This is what he had. He had half that lot, which was about 12. So I picked up 6 of them over time. I was like, okay, I got some. That's kind of cool.
These are the ones with what you talked about earlier that have Zacco's sports store stamp on them.
Some.
Okay.
Some of them also. Joe Zacco seemed to have 2 sets, actually. 2 of them came out of his estate sale. The other one, I call that the Zacco set, the one with the stamp on the back.
Okay.
And it looked like he stamped every one. The other set he had, it's got kind of kids script writing on the bottom. It's like one of his kids wrote in script the name of the player and the university that they played for at the bottom of each of the cards. They all have it. So that I call that is the Zacco kid script set, right? And so I'm guessing he had a complete set that looked like that too. All of those have not come or appeared. Most of them have appeared. So the lot that was in Leland's was mostly the ones with the kids script writing on them, but a few with the Zacco back, on them as well.
Maybe let me make a presumption here. I'm gonna almost say the ones with the kids script on them, maybe it's rarer than the Zacco ones, because think about it. If he took them home and gave them to his kids. I mean, think about what you did with stuff when your dad gave you as a kid. You didn't appreciate, you scribbled on it, whatever, throw it around with your brothers or whatever, and they get lost and everything, where Zacco probably had it in desk drawer or something and preserved somewhat. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah, and one collector has noticed a couple things that point to one of those two Zacco sets, and I can't remember if it's the kid script one or the one with his stamp on the back, was probably the proof set, like the first set produced from the negative. Because if you look at more than one example, kind of side by side, the one set from Zacco is just slightly, just you wouldn't notice unless you were comparing them, just slightly more clear and a little bit of a different shade of the background than the other ones in all the other sets. And also what was noticed by one collector, which was a great discovery, was one particular card, the one that I'm calling the proof, probably the original, does not have a print defect, a little photo defect on his forehead. And the other three that are known to exist all have that print defect. And I'm not an expert in photography, but my understanding is when you develop, film, you use some emulsion usually to get the paper to do its thing. And if you don't wash that off completely, it can damage the negative, and you get a little print mark where it kind of corroded or ate the negative. And so the one that we think is the set that was the first one produced, the one that's just a tad clearer and a little bit of a different shade, it's the only one of that card that doesn't have that print mark, which makes you think, oh, when they went and produced the rest of these, right, after Zacco or whoever approved them and said, yep, these look great, they were done shortly thereafter. And I do say shortly because there were some people who were speculating, well, maybe only one of these was produced in 29, and then, maybe for the reunions in the 60s, the rest of these were produced, and so they're not as old as that one set. I don't think that's true, mainly because I mentioned one of the sets is fully autographed, so it has autographs of all the players. And one is you'd have to have all the players together to get all those autographs. And I could find no reference to any time after that season that all of those players would have been in the same place, right? They scattered to the wind after the season, right? Went home, wherever home was. And two is none of the reunions did everyone show up. And also one of the players died in 1941 and his card is autographed. So that set was autographed before 41. And I couldn't find any reference to any kind of reunion before 41 where the whole 26 team would have got together. So I got to believe that was done when they were distributed, during or after this, right after the 26 season.
Wow. It's kind of hard for somebody to sign something 20 years after they passed on us.
Well, yeah, it's like, if you ever see a 1955 Topps All-American Jim Thorpe autographed, it's fake because he was not alive in 55. That'd be a great card to find. So I ended up with 6 of those. And then as luck would have it, that same collector who sold me those over time, probably about 3 or 4 years later, he called me up. He was at a show in Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, near Pottsville.
Okay.
And into the show walks a descendant of Barney Wentz, who was one of the players on the 25-26, team, and brought some memorabilia that had been passed down through the family through the years. And this person was interested in selling some of this stuff, raise some money. And one of the things that this person had was a near complete set of these postcards. And he said they belonged to Barney. They were his, and they got passed down through the generations, and he was interested in selling them. So this collector called me, and he was like, "Hey, I might keep a couple of these because I still think they're kind of cool, but I don't want them all. I know you're trying to get the set. Would you be interested in buying these?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So we struck a deal, and I was able to pick up, 12 or 13 of them, including, interestingly, a couple I already had. So now I've got a couple doubles, which means I could trade them or whatever, which is cool.
Right. Yeah.
And so I picked up a bunch of them, which got me to 15 of the 18 cards. But the problem was the three biggest cards in the set, the big dogs, I didn't have. And those were Barney Wentz. So ironically, the Barney Wentz near complete set that the family had did not include the Barney Wentz card. So probably somebody else in the family kept the Barney Wentz card. Can't blame them.
That's right? On a frame on somebody's mantle, say, hey, there's Grandpa.
Yeah. Hopefully it's still out there and it didn't get thrown away. So there was no Barney Wentz. I needed that one. I did not have Tony Latone. Really wanted Tony Latone.
Yeah, he's the stud.
There were a couple examples out there that I had seen. In fact, that 2012 auction in Leland's had a Latone in it. So I knew where that one lived because I knew who ended up with those cards. And the third one was Charlie Berry. Now, Charlie Berry's interesting because at that time, there were collectors who believed that the Charlie Berry card didn't exist because nobody had ever seen one. Nobody had ever seen it. It hadn't come up in the Zatko auctions. Neither of his sets had the Berry in it. The Wentz set didn't have the Berry in it. And some people thought, well, maybe they didn't make a card of Charlie Berry, because he was playing baseball at the same time. And he didn't actually get to Pottsville until late October because he was playing baseball. And until the season ended, he was committed to baseball. And some believe, well, maybe they printed those cards early in the season and he wasn't yet in Pottsville and he just didn't get a card. So I needed those three. Fortunately for me, right before COVID, in the Hunt auctions always has a big Super Bowl auction. It's always a football only auction right before the Super Bowl every year. They always have great stuff in it. And, in 2019, lo and behold, I'm looking through the Hunt auction and there's a complete set, including the Charlie Berry, of these postcards.
No kidding.
And it was actually framed. So someone had taken all the cards and they had put them in a matting and built this big framed glass encased item that you could put on the wall. And the lot said it came from a collection of a guy named Ducat, who, he's like the mecca of football collecting. He's like the Jefferson Burdick of football collecting. He was very early into the hobby before people were into football. And apparently this guy had everything. From all the way back to the origins of the game, he had it all.
Wow.
And so if something came from Ducat, it's primo. And this apparently came from Ducat. Now, I was never able to track down where did he get it from? Which player did these cards come from? There was no information in the lot as to where he got it from. But I mentioned they were all autographed. So somebody went around and got everything all of them autographed before they disbanded.
Is it possible that he was such a big collector, maybe back in that era, that he was like a friend of Sacco's or somebody and got invited to the reunion or wherever and got his own set? Maybe
we thought about that, except for this Jawish card, which is the player who died in 1941. That card was autographed in his collection. So that had to have been done before he died in 41.
Okay.
So nobody knows, right? Nobody knows for sure. What's interesting is that one of the players, Russ Hathaway, everybody just signed their name on all these cards except for one. Russ Hathaway wrote, "To David, regards R.G. Hathaway." 2 points about that. One is, who the heck is David? Right? And somebody that came with this set's name was David. There's no David on the team. There's no coach. I looked in every direction for a David. Who was this person that had this set back when Russ Hathaway signed it? Could not figure that out. But interestingly enough, one of the other sets has a couple of signed cards in it, including the Hathaway. And it was actually the Barney Wentz set. And his card says, "To Barney, regards R.G. Hathaway." It's exactly the same as he wrote for this guy, David. So I'm thinking probably same day, right? So again, there's some kind of an event, whether it was a party at the end of the 26th season or who knows, sometime before 41, these were autographed. So, yeah. So anyway, I I didn't want the whole set. It was going to be really expensive. These cards are not cheap, as you can probably tell, because they're so rare. So I went out looking for a couple of collectors that might split this lot with me, because I only needed 3. So, when I knew who collects these and went around, I found 2 collectors who were interested in splitting it. And then we spent some time just kind of pricing it out, relatively looking at what it would be. And I told them, hey, I don't care how you all split up the rest, but I want these 3. It's the only 3 I want because I want to finish the set. And so we worked through all that. And then we came up with kind of a, what's our maximum price that we all feel comfortable paying for this lot? Because we're going to have to buy them all together and don't want to, anybody to be unhappy if we spent way too much money. So we came up with a price and we were all set. And the way hunt auctions works is they put stuff online for a couple of weeks and you can bid kind of before the auction. But then the actual auction, the day before the Super Bowl, it's always Saturday before the Super Bowl, is a live auction. So they have a live auctioneer doing their thing, but they also have a live online as well. So you can still bid if you're not there in person as well. So we decided, because we were, you never know about your internet connection, right? And how that's all going to go. I've been burned before, wait for some auction to close and then my internet just decides to drop and you miss it, right? So I was like, why don't we just put our max in? I mean, I trust these people. They're not shill bidding this thing. Let's put our max in the night before up until, you were allowed to put something in online up till the night before that would be considered during the auction. Then you could bid real time as well. So we put our number in there and we were just going to leave it at that. But I was thinking, I'm going to get on the site and I'm going to watch this. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if it gets right there to the limit and we're not winning, I might bump it one more, right? Because I'd hate to think we were that close and we didn't get it. I didn't tell the guys I was going to do that. I was just kind of mulling it over. I was like, well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But what's, if you come that far, you might as well just put in a little bit more and just get this thing that you've been looking for.
You don't want to have the regrets the next day that you lost it for.
Exactly.
Right.
So, the auction comes up and the item comes up and bidding starts going and it's going. And I'm like, okay, we're still good. Now it's starting to creep up closer to our number. And I'm like, I don't know about this. Are we going to do it? Then it starts slowing down. I'm like, okay, all right. We're getting to like where people are thinking this, this lot, what it's worth. And we were right in range with what, others felt, the value of this lot was. And what happened that was funky was, so I'm watching in, the online thing and I'm watching the prices and it went up to our number and then a bid was retracted. So it said bid retracted and went back down to the bid prior to that. And then it went up about halfway to our bid. And I'm online. I don't know what's going on. Like, what happened there? Did something retract? Did that live auction, the site that does the, online stuff, did they type something wrong and then they backed it out? I don't know. So I don't know if we're winning, right? All I know is the bid is a little bit less than what we put as our max, but I don't know if that means we're the high bidder, or is there some rule like the next bid sequence has got to be a certain amount more and it's over our bid. And so now our max bid, isn't going to get counted. I didn't know. And I panicked. And I was like, you know what? I don't care if we're the bidder, the high bidder. I'm hitting the bid button because I'm not losing this at this point. So I just hit the bid button, took the next bid, and it closed. And I was like, oh my God, we won. I can't believe it. But ironically, the other 2 collectors who were watching it as well, they thought we lost because it went above our max. And they didn't know I was still bidding, right? So it was kind of funny. I called them both individually, and of course they get on the phone, and at first they're all kind of like mopey and depressed, and they're like, I can't believe we were so close. I'm like, well, I got good news for you. And they were so happy. And I told them, hey, if you want me to pay the extra, I'm more than happy to pay the extra. I'm just so happy to finally get these 3 cards. But they were all like, hey, you saved the day. I don't know what happened either, but we'll pitch in and cover the extra. It's not that big a deal. So
no, couldn't you be risking all 3 of you bidding against yourselves too, though?
Well, they weren't bidding, right? We
But
had agreed none of
but
us were going to bid.
but they didn't think you were bidding either, though.
I know, I know.
The
No,
same
you're
thing
right.
you
We
did.
could have.
Could all been going rogue and
We could have. I guess we just all trusted we were just going to stick to our maximum, that we put in. But you're right. I mean, we could have bid ourselves up,
right.
That would have been depressing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no. So that's how I ended up with, as of right now, the only complete set since that set was pulled apart, the only one that exists out there today.
Wow, that is extremely cool. Now, I got a couple questions about,
Yeah.
I guess from maybe the collecting standpoint. Okay, now are you nervous? Were the three of you nervous of knowing that this had been framed and behind glass?
Yes.
And you were going to split it up? Were you maybe worried about the condition when you take it out of the glass?
Sure were. Yeah. Well, and because we didn't know how they were attached, or were they attached? Like, were they put in little, picture sleeves, or, was it just glued on the back? Was it taped? How was it actually, and then we had to figure out, well, how are we going to cut this up too? Right. Because we're not keeping this together. We got to split this in three. So
Right.
What actually happened, funny story, is myself and one of the collectors and his wife, who does quite a bit of craft stuff, we cooked up this strategy where we were going to go to hunt, because we also didn't want to ship it. We don't want to risk shipping it. We didn't want to pay the insurance and the shipping for it.
Right.
They're in Pennsylvania. So I was like, tell you what, I'll just drive up. You just drive over. We'll meet there. And he said, I'll bring my wife. She'll bring her X-Acto knives and everything else that she uses for crafts. And we will inspect this thing, and we will figure out how to take this thing apart. And so we went, and we sat in the back room, and we carefully took it out of its frame and took the matting off and looked at it. They were kind of double stick taped to the back. I don't know why you would frickin' do that.
But there was more, so that's more of a modern type thing then. It wasn't like from back in the day when they were first made.
It was not glued. I'm guessing Ducat did it, and he was I guess 60s, 70s ish. I'm not sure his exact era, but I'm guessing he put this together and he double stick taped them all to the back. Now, we couldn't tell that initially, but what we did was we just cut them apart with the back attached to them. We were going to mess with the backs. We were like, hey, we'll split all these up, and then you all go figure out how to get the backs off of these.
To each your own.
I took mine to a professional, kind of restorer / somebody that knows how to, do those kinds of things, and had them removed. And that's how I found out it was double stick tape on the back. But yeah, we were very worried about, it could have been attached to the front too, to the matting in the front. We didn't know. Right. Fortunately, it wasn't. So the fronts of the cards, weren't an issue. It was getting them off the back. But we cut it all up. That went seamlessly. And then the gentleman and his wife took his. I took mine and the other person's, and I wrapped them up and shipped them to the third winner the next day. So
very, very cool. All right. I guess one of my other questions is, okay, as a collector, especially this story, now where is the more exuberance? Is it in the hunt and finding, hey, this is up for auction and I need these, or is it, I won the bid, I'm getting this, these are coming home? Where does those fall in relationship to each other?
Well, the whole process was fun because I've done a couple of deals with other collectors where we kind of figured out how to split something up. We did on VFC, that we're a member of, our football community. A few years ago, there was a 32 Packers Walker Cleaners premium set that came up. There are these big, nice premiums of all the players from that year from the Packers, done by a local cleaners, Walker Cleaners. And we did the same thing. We, said, hey, we're going to split this up and let's figure out how to do it. Let's figure out what the prices are. Let's make it all work. That's fun to work it all through and, just enjoy the hobby with others and figure out how to make it work. And, no contention at all between nobody's like, oh, I really want that one and I'm going to be mad if I don't get that. I mean,
Right.
everybody was just like, hey, let's just get some great stuff for our collection, right? And I love doing those kinds of deals
Hmm.
where you get to like work with other collectors and figure out what its value is and how to bid and then split it up and everybody's so happy after they get their stuff. So that was fun, but you just can't beat winning the item, right? I mean, especially if it's something you've been looking for a decade. And in this
Right.
case, the Charlie Berry card that, you know, there's only one right now that's known. Hopefully somebody out there's listening is like, I got one in my collection because they got to be out there. Those other sets, at least those complete sets that I've identified, unless somebody cherry picked those out and then forgot about them or somebody saw it doesn't have any markings on it, threw it away. Who
Mm.
knows? But you would think there'd be a few others,
Yeah, you would.
out there. And Charlie Berry, for those that don't know, I mean, he only played NFL for 2 years in 25 and 26, but he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. He was an extraordinary athlete. He played in the Major League Baseball for 11 years as a catcher. And then he had a 20-year career as a baseball umpire or yeah, and a football umpire or a football referee. He's actually trivia, great trivia answer. He's the only person to umpire the World Series, referee the NFL championship, and referee the college all-star game in the same season.
Wow.
Yeah, 1958, actually. He was one of the refs for the greatest game, Colts versus Giants in 58. He was on
Uh,
the field
well,
as
now
one of
now
the
now we know why
umpires.
there's only one card left because somebody
Yeah.
those cards and there was a
Oh,
dartboard in somebody's basement or something.
well, you could argue, I mean, Tony Latone obviously was a huge star and they had other stars on these teams, but I think everybody would agree Charlie Berry he was the man on that team. And of course he kicked the football that I have,
Right. I
through to
remember
beat
that.
the Notre Dame. That was Charlie Berry, which actually makes me wonder why he wasn't kicking in 26 too.
Hmm.
Because when you look at the game reports, he wasn't the one who missed all those field goals. So I'm like, why wasn't Charlie Berry kicking? If he was kicking, if he just made one of those kicks in those last two games each, they're the champs. Why wasn't he kicking the ball? I don't know. There's no explanation
Who,
as to
who
why he didn't kick.
who was
26.
kicking? Was
It
Henry?
was Jim Welch,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
a guy named Jim Welch yeah, well, at least in the Chicago Bears game, he's called out, which is kind of a bummer, as missing 3 field goals.
See.
I mean, I guess he was a pretty good kicker, but you got to think you want Charlie Berry on the field if the NFL championship's on the line. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he wasn't kicking.
Or even Fats Henry, because isn't Fats Henry had like the 100-yard punt?
Yeah, but he wasn't on the 26 team, so
Oh, he was
he,
only at
he
25.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
he was on 24 and 28. That's
Okay.
Henry. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
In fact, he's part of that whole reason why many believe the Maroons lost the 25 championship because he was one of the players that jumped from the NFL to the Maroons in 24 before they were an NFL team, and the NFL sued them. It was Pete Henry and maybe Guy Chamberlain played on that 24 team. I can't remember. A couple guys from Canton jumped ship against contract and against the NFL and went to Pottsville, and Joe Carr and the league sued Pottsville and they sued the players, and it got thrown out of court in Pennsylvania on a technicality. Wink, wink, in Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
You're not going to win in Pennsylvania. And a lot of people feel like that was part of the grudge that Joe Carr had against Doc Striegel and the Maroons that next year, because he was still
Okay.
frosted that they poached some NFL players, which was a big no-no at that point. So
Hmm.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Wow, very, very cool story. And the story behind the cards themselves, and the whole obtaining them. That's getting the whole set. That's some cool stuff.
It was fun.
But you had some other items too that you wanted to talk about too, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So the other one I wanted to focus on was in 1928. So a few years later, the Pottsville Maroons, as gifts to the players at the end of the season, gave them little anthracite coal charms / fobs. They're small football shaped pieces of anthracite coal, which of course was the product at Pottsville, the Anthracite League and anthracite coal mines there. They made these little charms, some call them fobs, which were basically these little items that you would put on a chain. Kind of today we'd call it like a charm bracelet, but back then, a lot of men had pocket watches, and those pocket watches had a chain hooked to maybe a button or something, so they didn't drop it, and it didn't fall out of their pocket. And people used to attach little charms to it, and a lot of organizations and sports teams and whatever would give these charms out to their players and for awards and things back in that era, because they were very popular, and the players would attach them to their chains. Well, the Maroons decided to do this in 28. And so they built, they created these little tiny footballs. They're only like an inch long, very small. On one side, etched in it is Pottsville Maroons. And they went on the cheap, by the way. The etching looks like they used some sort of
somebody had a rusty
wood
nail.
burner, but for something like you'd etch into coal. I don't even know what that would be. It's real wobbly, and it's not doesn't look that great, but it's part of its character. So it says Pottsville Maroons on one side of the little football. On the other side, it says 1928. It has the player's name and it has the player's position in it, which is kind of cool, right?
Right.
Now, the other thing about this team, and I still have never figured out, I've asked numerous people, and nobody can really answer this question. I can speculate. This team was loaded with talent. They had, Hall of Famer Pete Henry, Fats Henry. So this was one of the years he played for them when he came back. They had Walt Kiesling, who's in the Hall of Fame. They had Johnny Blood, who was in the Hall of Fame. So they had 3 Hall of Famers on the team. Tony Latone was still playing. Early pro and star Hap Morin, Mike Morin's dad, was playing. Barney Wentz played some games. Their quarterback, Jack Ernst, who played the whole time they were in Pottsville, who was very good, he was playing. And they had a bunch of Maroons players who had been there for at least 4 or 5 years playing together. Herb Stein and Frankie Racis and George Keneally and Osborne. And they were stacked. And they went 2-8 in the league. 2-8 in the league. And 4-10 overall. They actually lost 2 games to like teams that you like look at and they look like some local pickup league team, And why? What happened? Right? The only thing I can figure is from reading some of the clippings is, the Maroons always had financial troubles. Doc Striegel tried his best, but it was a small town, it was a small stadium. You've heard the stories. It had a hill behind it. A lot of people sat up on the hill for free and watched the games. They didn't go in the stadium. They were just always struggling financially. And I know toward the end, it got a little contentious. I know the players weren't being paid. I know there were rumors of like walkouts and we're not going to play the next game unless we get paid, and just a lot of strife. And I wonder if all that kind of off-field stuff was part of the reason this team just didn't gel. Because you look at the players on this team and it looks like an all-star team. You're like, how in the world did they lose 8 games? That's the only thing I can come up with. Is it was strife,
You sit there and you think about, that Philadelphia area, and I'm talking, draw a circle around Philadelphia, however many miles Pottsville is out in that 1925-26 season. You have Pottsville, you have Frankfurt, both really good NFL teams. The Red Grange League is going on, and the Philadelphia Quakers win that league. They're the best team in that league. They're going on and for 1 year, and 26. 26. And then you have the other East Coast teams aren't doing so bad either. The Giants are pretty good. There's the New York Yankees of Red Grange going on in the NFL and the original AFL, and just some great teams going on there. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, really cool year. But back to the fobs, the charms. As far as I can tell, only one was produced per player. Now, I have seen one or two come up to auction that just have Pottsville Maroons on the side, but no player information on the other side. So maybe they were extras that they, produced. I don't know, and they got into the market, but I've been able to track down and buy two of them. So I have the Tony Latone, my favorite all-time players, should be in the Hall of Fame, and Pete Henry.
Wow.
Hall of Famer. Yeah. So the
two
Henry,
of the hallmark players of that team too.
Absolutely. I would love to have the Johnny Blood. Johnny Blood did come up for auction, and it went for a lot of money, way more than I was going to pay for a little tiny piece of coal.
He's got the marquee name, though. Everybody wants that name.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that one went way over my budget. I was like, oh, I'm going to get this bad boy. And I was all ready. And no, I didn't even come close. But I got the Pete Henry first. Actually, a longtime collector, offered it up to me. He was downsizing his collection, knew I was into Pottsville, and he wanted to know if I wanted it. And of course, I was like, yep, I want it. What do you want for it? And so I got that one first. And then I missed on the Latone. It came up at auction years ago, and I made a run at it. I didn't win it. I thought it went for more than it was worth. And that kind of proved to be the case because it came back up, I'll say maybe 5 years ago. And I got it for less than what it went the first time. So I was kind of vindicated. I had to wait, 3 or 4 years for it. But I got it at the price that I thought was fair price. I have seen some other ones. I mentioned the Johnny Blood. That one's floating around out there. The Hap Moore and son Mike, who we both know. He has mentioned that he saw his dad's when he was a kid, or at some point it was like in his desk or something. He could tell you the story, but he doesn't know what happened to it. It disappeared, whether it went to, his brother or another family member, or his dad just, I don't know, threw it away. Who knows what happens with these things, right? But he hasn't been able to track it back down. I've seen, I've heard that the Frankie Racis is out there in the hobby. So Frankie was a long time Maroon. I think I saw a George Keneally, but I went looking for an image and I cannot find that image. So I might just be hallucinating, but I could have swore that there was a George Keneally charm floating around. There's also in one of the books, and I don't remember if it's in the Breaker Boys book on the Maroons or one of the other ones, there's a story about a player who threw his off the side of a train when they were coming back from a game or something, chucked it over the side and just got rid of it. And I can't remember what player that is. I have to go find the book and look it up. But that one, obviously, I think is gone. We're not going to find that one unless somebody gets really lucky. But, if you look at that,
Jeff will be out there by all the train tracks.
I know, right? I'll be like digging
everything.
around the dirt, seeing if like, 100 years ago, I can find something that's been laying there. But if you add all those up, I mean, that means, about a quarter to a third of these charms are still around, at least, which I think is horribly bad for 100-year, almost, items that are almost 100 years old. So,
and
I think it's pretty cool.
It is cool. And just think about, how you treasure them and other collectors treasure those. And back when we were kids, you said you're going to get punished. Santa's going to bring you a lump of coal. Well, this would be a pretty cool piece of coal to get in your stocking, right?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah. And one of the things I really like about these, and it's kind of the personal connection. I just think it's really cool if I'm holding something that Pete Henry held or Tony Latone held, right? Like you got it in your hand and you're like, Pete Henry had his big, huge mug on this thing at one point, was holding it in his hand. And now I'm holding it in my hand. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a personal item. It's not like the cards
exactly.
but they're not as personal as this. This has got their name on it and they probably cherish it. That's
something they had, something they wore. Yeah, I just think that's cool. So I really like those fobs. I'm always looking for them. I hope some other ones, show up on the market at some place or sometime. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
those are neat.
Definitely cool. That is really some great stories and some great items, and to a great team that definitely interested, and a lot of people are. So very, very cool. And I appreciate you coming on and telling us about that. Now, we met because of an organization that you. I believe you founded the organization, and you're the strength and the rah, and you keep everybody in line. And maybe you could talk about our little community of
Yeah.
collectors and historians.
Yeah, maybe there's some people out there that are interested in joining. So
Yeah.
I started it's Vintage Football Community, VFC. I started it, it's probably been 5+ years ago now. And really it was because, I was a member of quite a few other online kind of hobby forums. Most of them, though, were very baseball oriented. I don't have anything against baseball. I coached baseball for a long time when my boys were growing up, and I like baseball, but I don't collect baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about football. And it just seemed like all of the online communities out there were very, very focused on baseball, and the football traffic was not good. And it used to bug me because I'd always try to nudge these communities and try to get people to respond and interact, and just could not get a mass of people together all talking about football. So at some point I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna create a new community. And I called it a community on purpose because it's not really about the cards. Like I mentioned, coming up with a way to split up these items and just working through that process was so much fun, because it's kind of about, like-minded people who enjoy football, are passionate, want to talk about it, want to share information. It's a community, right? And so that's what I wanted. I didn't want it to be a cutthroat, because that's the other thing. Some of those online communities are just, gosh, people like hate each other, and like somebody wins something and somebody else is really mad, and, gets all uptight about it. And I'm just like, just a hobby. We're just having fun, right? It's supposed to
Right.
be fun. You're not supposed to be stressed out about it. So you don't win something, big deal. Is it really that important in the scheme of things? No. So I was hoping for that feel too. And so I started it, and, been very happy with, how it's gone. It's a collection, as you mentioned, of, collectors from across the spectrum. We have people that focus on 1800s, college to pre-NFL football, to pre-war, to post-war, to modern, just whole spectrum, right? Some are into cards, some are into programs, some are into pennants, some are into all, right? Photos. It's just a wide range. And then we have people who don't really do much collecting at all, but they're just they just have tons of football knowledge, right? They write books, they research. You got people like you doing podcasts and sharing like great historical information. And it's just a eclectic set of people who like to talk about football. And so,
yeah, I mean, you talk about community and talk about the different eras. I mean, you can sit there and go on different posts. You have posts on, people put up things of their favorite pieces of their collections, or things that they cherish, and it might be something from 5 years ago, or it might be something from 105 years ago, and people respect it. I mean, you never hear anything negative, and they say, "Oh, that piece sucks." It's always like, "Oh, that's cool. Hey, where'd you get that?" Give me some background on that. It's just cool stuff like that, and you get to absorb more football history just by going through it. And the folks in the community are awesome. They're great people, and it's a lot of fun. And they share pictures and images of what they have and stories, and it's really a lot of fun. And some of the most interesting ones, when you get into the community part, are of you guys going to trade shows and having dinner, and you share pictures, or the secret Santas and those kind of things. Those are fun to listen to and read too. So,
we try to get some fun activities in there too. Like you mentioned, we're playing fantasy football too, and we do some other stuff. And it's, in fact, this weekend is Chantilly, which is a big, card show down here in the Virginia area. And, I know some members are coming by, and we're planning to meet up there and, grab some dinner after the show and hang out for a little bit. So we'll try to post up a few pictures of whoever shows up for something like that. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and it is free for anybody out there. It's free. We do ask for donations periodically, very infrequently, every couple of years or so, just because the forum we use, the software costs a little bit of money. It covers that. We usually try to cover, we usually get a sponsor for the pizza dinner that we always have at the National. But usually we blow our budget there. People are having too much fun, eating too much stuff. And so, a little bit of the money might go toward, the pizza dinner maybe. But yeah, I mean, and then the other thing is, we've also been, I think, pretty good about trying to do tributes. We have had a few members unfortunately pass away, right? I mean, we have a spectrum of young to, old in VFC, and we have had a few members pass. We've done some sort of donation / fundraising each time to, we planted some trees. That was at the request of the family in someone's name. We gave to a youth organization that one member had been affiliated with all, for decades, and, just give back and, just
good stuff.
Try to be a community, right? That's what the community is about, helping each other and, just enjoying each other's company. So and collect what you like, as you mentioned. I mean, that's why, nobody's telling somebody else why what they're collecting is stupid or not worth it or whatever. And we have collectors all the way from people who are just they're a either a type collector or they're a completion collector. They don't care what grade it is. To we have some people who are like really, really, really into the high grade stuff. That's all they want. And it's all good at VFC. Whatever you love is what you should collect. And that's kind of our philosophy.
It's football and it's fun no matter what it is. And it's fun to.
Exactly.
The guy that only wants the helmets. I mean, that's cool stuff. And you learn a lot about the helmet, to the guy with the jerseys or the football cards, or guy who collects everything. It's just great stuff. And so how can people, if somebody was interested in joining, Jeff, what's the best avenue for them to apply for joining?
Yeah, I mean, just contact me. They can go through you if they're listening and know how to contact you. I mean, it's a real simple process. We just, it's free. It's anybody who's into it can be a member. We have a few simple rules, right? Very basic stuff like, don't torture each other and, avoid politics and religious discussions. We don't do that. This is about football. I want to hear any of that stuff. Just stuff I've learned from being on other forums. I tried to put together, 4 or 5 basic, simple, to me, common sense rules that, for whatever reason, some of these other forums don't adhere to or even state. Right. I think that's a mistake personally. I think you just make it clear what's expected of people. Most people are, professional and they want to, participate the right way. And if they know what's expected, they're going to be cool,
Right.
So
absolutely. Yeah. So folks, if you're interested, just send me an email, pigskinddispatch@gmail.com. I will get you in touch with Jeff and we'll get you into the VFC and you can start enjoying the fun and the community. So, Jeff, we really appreciate you coming on and talking about, not only the VFC, but your collected pieces. You've done this multiple times now and people really enjoy it. We get to see, the side of football that, we don't always get to see. Not everybody gets to, touch a football that was played in a big game 100 some years ago, or a charm that Pete Henry and Tony Latone had on their watch, and just great stuff. And please keep sharing, and we encourage others out there that want to share their piece of collection too to come on in, because we'd all like to hear it, or at least share it in the VFC. We'd love to hear it in there too. But really appreciate your time and your experiences and your sharing of your items, and we thank you for that.
Thanks, Darren. This was a blast. You're always such a great host, and thank you for all you're doing for the hobby and the community as well. This is great work you're doing.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. we invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.